Good afternoon. My name is Matt Doxa. I'm the CEO of Excelsior Wealth Partners, and I'd like to welcome you to our Excelsior podcast. This week we are tackling what we've affectionately titled The Great Annuity Debate Once and for All. I'm sitting here with our weekly contributors. We have Chris Wadsworth, Matt Champion, Kevin Christopher, and our very own Luke Geckel, all part of our Excelsior team here. And what we've decided to do is the annuity topic in America seems to be fairly polarizing. A lot of reasons for that, but we wanted to tear that apart. A lot of our clients come to us with questions, preconceived notions, what have you, when it comes to the annuities, more so than most any products. So we said, hey, let's take the next 45 minutes, tear this apart, and see if we can help some of our clientele work through the conundrum that seems to be these annuities. What's an annuity? An annuity is essentially an insurance contract where you would, in theory, turn over a sum of money and in receipt have payments that you wouldn't outlive. Now, I don't know if that's the Webster's dictionary version of an annuity, but that's the layperson's essentially, what these are. I would make the case that Social Security, to put it into layman's terms, is a form of an annuity in the sense that there's monthly payments forever that you can't outlive. You could live to be 120 years old and you're still getting that income stream. Transferring longevity risk to an insurance company seems to be like a decent idea, at least on paper, right? I can't outlive my money. If I invested it poorly, that might not be the case, or if I live too long. So I guess the question I have for the group is what is conceptually, everyone loves Social Security. You hope that you get a cost of living adjustment, 2.3%, and, it increases. But America is in love with Social Security in terms of the income. There's some problems with the program for sure. But when it comes to the what I would call personal pension, an annuity, some of these debates start to happen where people will say high expenses and surrender charges, high commissions, you name it. I think I've heard everything in regards to these annuities. But the question I would have for the group, and I'll just ask that we go around, is why do you believe that these are such polarizing products? Why is there so much pro and con in the marketplace? Chris?
I think it's sensationalism, actually. I think they're very easy to pick on. I think when somebody's writing an article or doing a TV program and they're trying to talk about personal finance, I think looking at annuities, the fact that they are expensive, the fact that they have changed so much over the years, they're very easy to pick on and very entertaining for people to talk about. So, and I think they're misunderstood a lot too, which makes it even easier to put them down.
Matt?
This is Matt Champion. I would agree with that. I think the other thing is annuities tend to be used more for people closer to retirement age. So I think when you're dealing with people in that age range and that market, you're going to get a lot of strong opinions, good and bad. Regardless of what the conversation is. But I just feel with, at least on the advisor side of the table, there's a lot of compelling arguments you can make for and against using annuities to create income. But I do think, to your point, with Social Security, it's just it's a big topic of conversation right now with the number of baby boomers retiring, getting ready to draw income. And I think that's just, the big topic on everybody's mind currently.
Kevin?
My opinion is it makes a really good soundbite, like Chris said, to be anti without really giving any explanation as to why. I think that they're, all investments have their place. They're neither good or bad. It's in the right place, it's a great tool. In the wrong place, it's a horrible tool.
Well said. Lou?
Well, Matt, I gotta agree with Chris. I think it's in this day of the media, annuities are an easy target to generate responses. First of all, they're issued by insurance companies. Nobody likes insurance companies.
Come on, is that true?
Yes, absolutely is. They think they make too much money. They think they cost too much. And also, you got to look at the Vanguard effect. If you're starting to get ETFs and index for 10, 15, sometimes free nowadays, I think, basis points, and your costs are annuities, they're going to start at one on the low side. It's an easy target. Compare and contrast and get headlines and get a few commercials if you're on TV, get a big ad, sell some books, get some assets. But most of those people don't understand them. So it could be even a marketing tool.
No, I think all well said. I think we try to be product neutral, meaning, annuities might not be make sense for you, but for somebody else. I know people, that went through these market corrections think that these variable annuities with the guarantees are the greatest thing since sliced bread. But for this Ken Fisher fellow to get up there and say, hey, I hate annuities, so should you. That's, you might be right, you might be wrong, but it's a blanket statement to individuals, and I just have always hated that. But in the circa 1980s, you would hear high expenses on annuities, you would hear high commissions, you would hear long surrender schedules, you would hear not a lot of investment options. I think these companies are smart enough that manufacture these annuities to have addressed all that. Run it to today and you can get annuities with no surrender charges and low expenses and, a multitude of investment options. So I think they've worked hard on it, but but this will be my last piece on this bullet point here, but I think you guys have it when it comes to some of the marketing manufacturing. So where I think in the 80s, if I was a wirehouse and I didn't manufacture a variable annuity, and a lot of business I lost to a variable annuity company, I very well, if I don't manufacture it myself, probably formed an opinion that says we're up against this. How do you sell against it? Here you go. Here's some bullet points, and it just kind of morphed from that. And the problem I see is some of the advisors I talk to, they still have this 1985 version of what annuities are. And I just don't think they're educated. They haven't taken the time. They've made their decision to say, okay, what's the new, it's like, I had a 1979 AMC Gremlin and it didn't have power steering. Well, cars have power steering now. You can't hate cars because you had Popeye forearms back in the day from slinging the steering wheel. You got to do your homework. So, it just is what it is. I recognize it when you see it. It's just they're very polarizing, and I just often wonder, are these advisors up on them? They may or may not make sense for your clients, but are you giving a fair shake to all the different tools that are in the marketplace to help your clients navigate these waters? And if you've made a decision that a product is inherently bad, that's just a tough pill to swallow. So that's a good opening to this. I appreciate all the insight. We're going to change this up and go to the pros and cons. So let's suppose you do decide that a variable annuity, equity indexed annuity, a multi-year generation or a guarantee annuity, an immediate annuity. There's a bunch of annuities in the marketplace. Let's assume that you decide as a client that you are worried about outliving your income and you'd like to take a portion and address it. What are the pros and cons to buying an annuity? And let's keep it within kind of the variable annuity, which seems to be the most polarizing. I find it interesting that the advisors who sell variable annuities tend not to sell equity indexed annuities, and the people who sell equity indexed annuities, fixed index annuities, don't sell variable annuities because of the licensing issue. But I just find it very interesting that one sells X, one doesn't sell Y, and to be up on both is just almost not fair. Of an expectation, I wouldn't think, if you don't have a license. But what do you think the pros and cons are of the annuity market?
Chris? What I'll say as far as the pros and cons, so I'll give you an example. I met with a woman last night, a potential client, and she's what I would call a do-it-yourselfer. So she has a TD Ameritrade account. She only believes in stocks. She has $700,000 to her name and wants $60,000 a year of income. So she wants about an 8% withdrawal rate. And she said, well, I have dividend-paying stocks. They're getting me, 3, 4, maybe 5% dividend, and I can make up the rest with appreciation. Well, in my opinion, that's a fool's errand to try and take that kind of rate of withdrawal when you're 64 years old, about to retire in about 2 to 3 years, and expect your money is going to last taking that kind of withdrawal rate. Conventional wisdom would say you're going to get maybe 4, some say 3, some say 5, but you're not going to get 7-8% withdrawal rate unless you pick a product that can actually guarantee that. So there are annuity products out there that will give secondary guarantees on the money, also stay in the market, give you the potential for growing your income, but will also have that guarantee. And I think that gives somebody that needs that kind of withdrawal rate the best chance possible to not outlive their money. So I would say that's kind of the pro to annuities, variable annuities with secondary riders, is that it gives you the best chance. If you don't have, basically, if you haven't done your job and saved enough money to retire with based on what your income expectations are, it gives you the best chance of not outliving your money. Cons, well, you have to pay for that. You know, that's not free. So you're going to look at expense rates, and they're going to be higher than, her TD Ameritrade account. So those are my pros and cons.
I would add to that, I think, you kind of hit on it, but one of the biggest pros is just the predictability of knowing what you have coming in. I mean, when you think about, going to work, if you're hourly or salary, you really know what your paycheck's going to be. So you know what lifestyle you can have, what money you have coming in to pay bills. And I think that's what a variable annuity with these riders really gives, is that predictability of knowing what you have coming in. The other thing is, again, that these come up more and more, is just longevity. People are living longer and longer. Nobody has that crystal ball. And, the days of retiring at 62, having a pension from a company and passing away at 66 are gone. People are living, 25, 30 years in retirement. So to have that check where you don't necessarily have to worry about market erosion or things of that nature, outliving the money is a huge positive. I got a study here. I'll just read it because I'll probably butcher it if I try to go off the top of my head here. But LIMRA just did a study recently. This is as of October. And what they said, more than half of consumers would choose guaranteed lifetime income over a lump sum payment. So LIMRA has found 53% of Americans aged 50 to 79 with at least $100,000 in assets would choose guaranteed lifetime income, $660 a month is what they use, over a lump sum of $120,000 when offered in a hypothetical situation. When asked why they would take the guaranteed lifetime income rather than the lump sum, to kind of speak to the point, 57% said it was because they expected to live long in retirement. 46% said it was because it would provide them with that peace of mind. So again, that kind of just backs up what we're talking about on the pro side. Chris, you mentioned the fees. Nothing's free. You got to pay for those guarantees. Some of the other things that you hear come up on the variable annuity from a con, the money's not as accessible. A lot of these annuities have surrender charges, 5, 7, 9 year surrender schedules where you can only access a certain portion of the money. So that one does come up quite a bit from time to time as well.
This is Kevin. The pros of the annuity, as everybody has mentioned, is that you generate a stream of income that you can't outlive. It's more about, retirement's a lot about cash flow. So you're getting that Social Security check every month, and you're also getting, these checks coming in on a guaranteed basis. A lot of clients find peace of mind with that. When you talk about, Matt and Chris both brought up surrender charges, which means that you're illiquid. But the reason you buy an annuity is for guaranteed income. So it's not money that you plan on pulling out of the market. It's planned on generating you a lifetime income for a 5 or 7 year period of time. You shouldn't be switching these in and out of these. This is, you should have separate accounts. Not all of your money belongs in an annuity, just enough to guarantee your bare minimum standard of living. You can't live without bills belonging in an annuity. Well, that's my piece.
Good.
Matt, I guess most everything's been addressed. You got other than the non-qualified or non-retirement aspect of the tax referral. Many times if a client's in a high tax bracket, that makes sense to defer some of those gains and income taxes. I think the reason that you go on the cons is it's also part of the pro. The pro is that you can have the guarantee of lifetime income. It takes away the longevity risk and the sequence of return risk, but many studies out there show that the annuities that are out there, they're not accessing that benefit. They're just letting their money sit there, so they're paying a lot of the higher costs without even getting the benefit of what they're paying for. Now, were they improperly sold? Do clients forget they need it? Do they just decide they don't want to have the extra income? I think sometimes it's a combination of everything.
Well, annuities are sold wrong, right, sometimes? So, what I would say on the con is annuities are good for the right person. If you're selling them to the wrong person for the wrong reason, then it's a horrible product, right? So in my example, if that woman had $1.5 million and she could take 5% off or 4% off and get her income, is annuity the right product at that point? Probably not, right?
Not right.
Right. So, and how many advisors out there would try and, fit that square peg in that round hole? So I would say one of the cons is that they're just sold improperly.
And I think that's more of the narrow scope of this conversation is I inherently don't believe that annuities are bad products whatsoever. I mean, Matt just cited an article that, and there's countless articles out there. I truly believe that people that understand hedging, understand risk, understand annuities, know there's a place for them in certain portfolios. That said, if I have $4 million accumulated for retirement, whether it's through a IRA or other, I'm probably not worried about outliving my money. So I don't know that I'm a great candidate for an annuity if I'm not worried about outliving my money from the main reason that annuities tend to be sold today or tend to exist. So if I were in a market where some of the homes are a little less expensive and sometimes assets are tougher to come by. If you've accumulated X amount of money and it has to last you forever, and you're worried about retiring, as I'm sitting here right now doing this podcast, the markets are disintegrating. If you were to retire today, and all of a sudden you're down 20% in that first year, you might have looked back saying, "Geez, maybe I should have put a portion of money in my assets in an annuity." So for me, it's more about who should they be sold to. My pet peeve is the advisors have made their determination that annuities aren't a good fit years ago, and they've never revisited it. And I just don't think that might be the way to go either. So good conversation, good points. I go back to that Social Security piece. It's just going to that mailbox every month to get a $1,700 check that can't go away. There's just something to be said about that every month. Our annuities somewhat complex. Yeah, they are. Some of these things are, use words like algorithms and all sorts of good stuff. But, going to that mailbox every month to get that $1,700, there's just people find solace in that. So good conversation. So let's suppose that you do decide amongst all the other product solutions that are out there to navigate these retirement waters, that an annuity has a place in a portfolio. Let's suppose you've made that determination for all the things that we've talked about. What are the best annuities? And I don't mean companies. We have all the data on who's bringing in assets, who the most assets flow to in terms of variable annuities. I don't think we go into that. I don't think that's the topic or the scope of this. But it's more, should I be in a variable annuity where I can invest in the stock market and potentially my check can increase throughout my life to capture those gains? Should I be in an equity index annuity or fixed index annuity where maybe I don't capture all of the market, but I have a window 2 to 6-7% that I'm very comfortable with, the return on my money, and I'm okay with not swinging for the fences on 20% returns as opposed to not losing 20% on a bad year. Should I be in an immediate annuity? Should I be in a deferred annuity? Should I be in a multi-year guarantee? Interest rates are a little, they're creeping up, but they're a little low these days. To lock up your money for 6-7 years for 2, 3, 4% might be a tough pill to swallow if you're kind of mirror driving circa 1981 where they had 15% rates on some of this stuff. But once I made that determination, Chris, who should I look to? What type of annuities are best for our clients?
I think that answer is going to depend on who the client is, right? So each client is going to be in a different situation and make each annuity more suitable. What I will say is, for me, like you mentioned, the fixed annuities, the multi-year guarantee annuities that are just straight fixed for a certain number of years are probably not where I'm going with my clients, only because the rates are too low at this point. Will rates go higher? Most likely. I'll revisit it at that point. The difference between the variable annuities and the fixed index and equity indexed, most of the fixed index and equity indexed are capped, so you're not going to get as much return as possible. You're also not going to have as much loss. And from my knowledge of the fixed index and equity index, the income riders aren't as robust as they are on the variable annuities. So what I'll say is, for me and my clients, I would go with a variable annuity, only because, yes, you can lose more money in the market, but if you're selling the annuity for the right reason, which is income, that becomes less and less important for the client, as long as you temper expectations and let them know that, yeah, there could be losses on here, but those losses are inconsequential to your income, and your income will always be there, and the variable annuity gives the best income rates.
So best VA, that's kind of a loaded question, but as with most recommendations in the financial planning world, I think a lot of it is going to be situational. There's a lot of different factors you got to look at. The client's age, the risk tolerance, all their other assets, their expenses, a lot of factors to look at. The other thing that I think you really got to take a look at, when you're talking about these annuities and some of these income riders, is there a spouse involved? And is there an age difference? What does the situation with the spouse look like in terms of, both Social Security figures? The other thing that sometimes comes up, not so much as often lately, but some people out there still do have pensions, and you got to look at different pension options that were elected. Was there a spousal protection option, which might alter what you recommend from a variable annuity income standpoint? So I think there's a lot of different features. What I've been seeing a lot of lately is similar to Chris. I think the fixed annuities, multi-year guaranteed annuities right now, the rates are a little bit low. From what I've seen, to get a really good rate, you got to go, lock it in for 9-10 years to get a decent rate. And who knows, could rates come up and you're locked into a lower rate. But the variable annuities that still allow some market exposure with some downside protection work well. There's a lot of different companies out there right now, and it's funny with these companies, they all compete against each other with interest rate payouts and guaranteed growth rates. So you're starting to see interest rates on these annuities come up quite a bit. So I think a lot of times there's annuities with living benefit riders, guaranteed income riders, where if you can wait a few years before you turn on the income, that can be a pretty powerful story as well. So again, I don't know if that necessarily answers the question, but I do think, especially with annuities, the situation is king. It's going to dictate a lot of what makes the most sense for the client.
I think we're starting to beat a dead horse here. The fixed annuities, 10-year treasury's got to come up to get the rates where they need to be. I'm not an expert on as Matt had discussed earlier, on the equity index. I understand that they have the floor and the top. I don't think their living benefits aren't nearly as robust. And when it comes to the VA, it really depends on what the client's looking for. There's a lot of really good variable annuities out there right now, and they all have their niche, be it your age, be it spousal like Matt Champion had talked about, be it the sub-account investments, and depending on what you're trying to accomplish, it really determines, what the best annuity is for that client.
Well, so this is Lou. I guess that I'm looking at everything everybody else said regarding profiling your client and everything that goes with that. However, generally, a VA is good for a client who wants market exposure, maybe in a high income bracket, and wants a tax deferral. Or they may need to put on an income rider, and they want to have the possibility of some of those dollars left for children or grandchildren. An indexed annuity or a fixed indexed annuity would probably be best for someone who's conservative but wants some market participation, where they like the idea of a floor and a cap, so they're not experiencing everything, mostly not experiencing the downside. The fixed annuity or multi-year guaranteed annuity would be appropriate for a very conservative, high tax bracket individual, where the net return of the most probable lower interest rate would be better than a CD. An immediate annuity would be probably best for a single individual who's looking for a guaranteed income that doesn't care if they leave anything to any beneficiaries or heirs. I think that's what you look for, Matt.
It is. All great points. I'll take it a little bit different and a little bit of a different. We'll close out this one in a second. We have one more topic to discuss thereafter. But I don't know if you could say what's the best annuity, very situational. And I think it changes. I mean, one of the things that drives me nuts is, I'll use the word Salesforce in lieu of the word financial advisor. So if I work for company X and 95% of the products that we write with our clients are from company X, I'd call that more of a sales force than I would an actual financial advisor. So it's just tough to be able to say, should you be in a variable annuity? I'll take this a little counter cyclical. What I said earlier was it's interesting because the people who tend to do equity indexed annuities, index annuities got a bad name, so they put a little bit of a different cloth on them, a Zorro mask, and call them fixed index annuities now, but more mainstream. But a lot of the advisors that sell those products don't have securities licenses, and that's not a good or bad thing. It's just that they don't sell variable annuities because you have to have a securities license to be able to offer something that has ties to securities. So what you end up seeing is this polarizing effect of people that don't have licenses that like annuities. And it also changes very specifically by state. So we're in New York State. If you go over the border into Pennsylvania, it's a totally different world with the fixed index annuities. Something to take note of. But, the people who sell a lot of the variable annuities, they typically don't sell the equity indexed annuity. So as a consumer, the point I'm trying to make is I don't know that, one, you can say what the best annuity is, and two, I don't know that you can go to one person and get that answer. If you're going to go to an advisor that represents a company, and you say, hey, where do most of your product recommendations fall? If it's within that company, I think you got to take a hard look at that. I don't think it's the same of, hey, when you go to a Ford dealer, you get a Ford. There's some brand loyalty there. It's a little bit different in the sense that companies want to sell their products and they use their sales forces to do so. It's a little bit different, and it's why. This firm, the Excelsior firm, tries to be product neutral, and we're in that independent space, so we don't have that conflict of interest. And a lot of it, to me, comes back to the culture. It's a lot of financial advisors start in a certain place, whether it's a wirehouse, whether it's with a big insurance company, you name it, and you tend to become a product of your training, your daily dose of vitamins of what the culture is. Because the companies exist to do what they do, which is, say it's a wirehouse, it might be running people's money and charging a fee for asset. But you tend to get a little bit as an advisor, you hear the steady dose. I equate it to a Irish Catholic kid, growing up in perhaps a conservative Republican household. Most of the kids are going to end up with the same philosophies as the parents. Not often do you see the Irish Catholic kid become a practicing, Buddhist after growing up in that household. So it's just a point. I've gotten to see it a lot. Tough questions, but I think we got some really good insight on that topic. Last topic of the day, gentlemen. What is, and I just alluded to some of it, maybe a good segue. What is the financial advisor's role in helping clientele navigate through the annuity market, the waters, or even retirement planning in general? Knowing some of the things that I just talked about, that every company seems to have a philosophy, whether it's a protection-based planning philosophy where you lead in with insurances, or if it's an investment-based philosophy where you lead in with, the investment side and circle back. There does definitely tend to see some, I don't even know the word I would use, some tendencies, some biases. Talk to me about the financial advisor's role in this. And Lou, I'm going to go back the other way on this one to kind of spice it up a little.
Financial advisors' role is, one, keep biases out of their fact finder.
Is that possible given what I just said?
Yes, for a good financial advisor. You need to keep that out of the way. Do a detailed fact finder. Find out what the client's goals and objectives are, and recommend the appropriate and best suited product.
But that
take a fiduciary role.
That sounds like communism to me. It sounds like it makes.
How the hell is that communism?
It makes sense. It makes sense in a vacuum, but applied, it doesn't make sense.
That's the role we're given. That's why there's a fiduciary
But knowing what you know,
standard.
being around as long as is that statement a communism type statement where it applies in theory but not in actuality because of all the, if I go to work for a warehouse and I start doing VAs and life insurance, I'm going to be fired the next day.
You're not going to be fired.
You're going to be fired. They wouldn't have hired you because you got to have a certain amount of assets under management. But that's an example. But you know where I'm going with this. Go ahead.
I'm going to stand by my statement.
All right.
I don't think it's communism. That's why we're in the independent world. We're not at a
We are, but a lot of
brokerage
advisors
firm.
aren't though.
So there's better.
Then they
advice
should
than
be at
some
an
others.
independent firm.
Well, that
Clients.
makes sense
Might
too,
be the
right?
case.
Maybe it's part of the role as a client to think and educate themselves on where they're going. Maybe that's the next podcast.
That's
Indeed.
important.
The responsibilities of the client. Okay, here's Kevin.
You don't need an annuity, and you're going to uncover that when you sit down with your client by asking good questions and figuring out what goals they have and what they're trying to accomplish.
Check on that. I would say that it really doesn't matter how much money you have. One of the primary concerns of any retiree is running out of money, whether their nest egg is 200,000 or 200 million.
All right. So, again, a portion of most clients, if you have pensions and Social Security and you're still not meeting your basic needs, then if you have $10 million, I guess you could need an annuity too. But I don't know.
Matt Champion, the role of the financial advisor.
So again, I mean, Lou mentioned, threw it out there. There's good advisors, there's bad advisors. What we get to see a lot is, and what you probably got to be careful of is the advisor that literally sells the same product, same company in every situation. You have to look at that and really question what role is the advisor playing. To your point, Matt, are they an advisor or are they a salesperson? And the other thing, we get to see with some of these annuities with advisors, I guess we'd call them the bad advisors, is they get comfortable. They get familiar with how to tell a specific story about a product, even down to the marketing material and the paperwork. I think advisors get comfortable rather than familiarizing themselves with a lot of different things that are out there from a product standpoint. They just tend to gravitate to one or two, which isn't necessarily the best strategy. But in terms of being able to make a recommendation, Again, we keep hitting on it, but I think the big thing is income. If you do a really, really good fact finder, and what I mean by that is you really drill down on a person's budget. You look at the known income sources, Social Security, pension, maybe rental properties, things of that nature. You look at the known income sources and really take a deep dive into their expenses, both current and maybe some expenses that may come up in the future. Then you can really do a good analysis to determine if an annuity is appropriate or not. So I think the biggest role of the advisor when you're talking about annuities, as it relates to retirement income planning, is really just understanding the client's budget as best as they possibly can. And with that, they're going to be able to make a pretty strong recommendation.
So a couple points here. I think one of the advisor's roles is to be the most knowledgeable person in the room when we're talking about the products. So know your products, know what's out there, do your research because your clients hopefully are doing theirs too. The other point is do what's right for the client. So if we really want to tackle the 6,000-pound gorilla in the corner, can we talk about commissions, right? So a lot of advisors sell annuities, or the perception is that a lot of advisors sell annuities to pad their own pockets, right? So commissions are high up front on annuities. You have to actually do a good job for your client, keep a client for a long time to actually make more money in an advisory account because those come as a slow payment. So I don't know what the rest of the group feels as far as do advisors sell annuities based on commissions. A good advisor shouldn't and wouldn't. They have their clients' best interests in mind. But like we said, there's some good advisors and there's some bad advisors out there too.
I will say that in response to a lot of the bad publicity, these insurance companies, these manufacturers of these variable annuities have worked really hard to kind of curb some of the unpopular press releases that come along with annuities. So I mentioned it earlier, but surrender schedules used to be 7, 8, 9 years. Now you can get an annuity with zero surrender. Commissions, I've read that for years. High commissions. To the credit the insurance companies, there's a commission decision that happens by every advisor when you write an annuity that says I can take the most up front, I can take hardly any up front, and I can get paid ongoing a small amount for the duration that I would get paid to work with the client. So, going back to the theme that it's the advisor, I think that buoys my point that I don't think there's any good or bad products. There may be good or bad advisors, but to the credit, I think there isn't a chink in the armor, if you will, that these insurance companies haven't at least provided that they're not high commissions, they're low commissions if you select a low commission option. You want a low cost annuity, you need to go to the marketplace and shop and find the lowest cost. The one thing that Lou, he got really passionate about that last one. You guys can't see him here, but there was a vein in the middle of his head that was pretty scary. But I think it's tough. So here at Excelsior, if somebody decides they want a variable annuity, what we do is we go to the analytics, the analysis desk, and we say, what's the lowest cost, top income rider in the marketplace? And that changes daily, so we don't keep up on it necessarily. And, I don't know if you're able to. And then they will come back with, here's 3 or 4 that meet your criteria, and, here's a prospectus, go get them. I don't think that that's how the real world works, is if I work for a bank and they have 4, or one of the warehouses, if they have 4 VAs on there, 2 equity index annuities, how can you say that the advisor is going to the marketplace and doing the best job for the client when the company is saying, you can only sell 3 here, you can only sell 2, you can only sell 6 when there's 17 in the marketplace? So that's where I go back to that point of sometimes it's difficult for the advisor, depending on where they work, to be able to actually, implement a full plan of actually going to the market because they don't have, and there's a lot of bureaucracy in corporate America. So if one of these companies comes out with a great product today, it might take 6-8 months to review it to make its way to the shelf to get it to your clients. And that's more of that communism comment that I had earlier, Lou.
I still don't know. I still don't understand.
Even after that conversation,
I still don't understand it.
All right, I think we got enough.
Address your product committee. Most of those firms that you mentioned, and banks, probably more than even the wirehouses, but in the end, their product committees are there for one reason, and that's not to protect the client. It's there to protect the firm and trying to alleviate legal action. And that's many times where there's so few. And maybe that's something that clients should think of when they're somewhere other than an independent.
Fair. All right, gentlemen, as always, I thank you for your time. Any other last comments that we would have? If not, be sure to tune in next month as we, I'm not sure if we're going to go with Lou's recommendation, but that seemed like a good one. Maybe we'll go with that. What's the client's role in the client-advisor relationship? Stay tuned. Thanks, everyone.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.